Alright, so today we're going to be looking into name appropriation, which is supposedly a subset of cultural appropriation. So, from what I understand, name appropriation is basically when you use a name from another culture that you do not belong to or have historically oppressed, or should I say your group has historically oppressed. To me, it kind of sounds like straight up racism, because it's basically saying, because you're white, you cannot do this. That is literally racism, because you're excluding another race from doing something on the basis of their race. And just because someone's group historically did something doesn't mean that they are personally responsible for it. It's the same thing with like slave reparations and stuff. The actions of your ancestors or your ethnic group in the past do not reflect your own views, and they do not determine, or should not determine, what you are and aren't allowed to do. For me, the only thing that should determine that is your own actions. Your own actions have their own consequences, but you shouldn't be punished because of the actions of your ancestors that you literally had no say in. I also feel that this type of thinking is dangerous because you're basically saying that an entire race of people is responsible for what their ancestors did, collectively, and therefore they cannot do certain things. So even though I have strong thoughts on this, and to me it literally sounds like racism, I decided to look more into it, and so we are going to review an article on it and see if it changes my understanding. So the first example is as follows. Name appropriation is most prevalent with white people and Native American/Hawaiian names. I'm not going to go into the long history of how white colonizers massacred the natives, including Hawaiian natives, to steal land and wipe out their culture, even to the point where it was illegal to speak their own indigenous languages or practice their own religions. There are very lengthy histories online where you can inform yourself about these horrors in American history. But it happened. And then a white person thinks it's cool to give their white child a native name. You have to understand how offensive it can be to indigenous cultures, especially if it's a sacred or tribal name. So the history does line up with this one. However, what I said before still stands. Not only that, but I feel like restricting names to a certain culture, not only is it discriminatory, but it kind of reinforces oppression, because it's basically reinforcing, okay, because you historically repressed us, we are going to repress you instead. Or maybe suppress would be a more appropriate word to use, but you understand what I'm saying. And at the end of the day, it's your child. You should be able to name your child whatever you want to name your child, within reason, I feel like. And another thing that this fails to address is cultural blending. Over the years, many things have shifted to other cultures or have blended between cultures because of trade and other things like that. Culture is not a static thing that could be individually defined. Like, you can't restrict culture that closely. You could say certain things belong to certain cultures, but then again, culture spreads. That's just how things work. Things that belong to different cultures have spread to other cultures and blended together to make newer cultures. And that's just how history works. Items and ideas and everything else, it spreads, good or bad. And especially now with the internet, ideas are spreading more than ever. And trying to restrict that kind of thing is near impossible to do effectively. But luckily, there's more to this article that seems to have addressed these concerns. The second section says, but wait, Dakota is a state name. I didn't even name my baby after the tribe. As I stated above, no buts. Take a moment from your initial white defense reaction. Wow, initial white defense reaction. and absorb this idea from the oppressed point of view. Imagine your name is unique, say Thalia Alessandra. You are now an adult and have never met anyone with your unique name, but you are working for the worst boss ever who is highly abusive. He calls you names, makes you work 80 hours a week, then he cuts your pay in half and eventually fires you on the spot, leaving your family without an income. Then you find out on social media that this horrible person gave your child your unique name, Thalia Alessandra. Not after you, but just because he thought it was a cool name. It would make you sick to your stomach. So quite a lot to unpack with this one. First of all, you can't say an entire race of people is like a horrible boss. I mean, historically, people have oppressed other people. But this is not a personal thing. Every white person was not involved in the oppression that happened to minorities. There are definitely still racist and bad people today, but the majority of white people, or basically any race in general, have not personally participated in the oppression of these people, unlike the boss in this story. And being someone with a unique name myself, I would be very confused, to be honest, more than mad, because why? Why would you steal my name if you hate me? And also, what is a white defense reaction? Do white people just have a built-in defense reaction or something? It seems like you're generalizing white people again. That sounds a little suspicious. Again, the article tries to address this. I wouldn't care. Anyone has the right to name their child whatever they want. Yes, you would care. You would be enraged. Now add centuries of oppression to that rage. Again, every white person in existence has not personally contributed to my oppression. And by naming their child a certain name, that is not contributing to oppressing people. Especially if they acknowledge it comes from another culture and are embracing it. That's something I would welcome because they're encouraging that culture and helping it spread. That is, if they are educated enough. Again, the article tries to offer an explanation to this. But what if I love the culture and want to honor it? No, because names are an integral part of culture and language. And if you're not part of that culture, and worse, part of a group that has historically tried to eliminate that culture, language, and names, it's incredibly insensitive to take a part of it and wear it like a Gucci handbag. So again, I take issue with this, because part of a group that has historically tried to eliminate that culture, that you don't have a say in. You can't control if you were born white or black or whatever culture you were born into. That is not something you could have controlled, and you shouldn't expect people to abide by your rules because of that. Nobody chooses to be white or a minority or anything else. It's something you're born with, and you can't really change. And nobody's trying to intentionally oppress people by choosing a name. And it doesn't seem harmful to me. Someone likes a name, so they name their kid that. They shouldn't be harassed for that, and they shouldn't be condemned for doing that, because it's just a name at the end of the day. And it's their child, so they can name their child whatever they would like to. It's just, I'm getting a little annoyed. Because at the heart of all this, you are discriminating someone based on race. You are telling them, you are this race, so therefore, you cannot do this thing. In this case, pick out a name for your child that is not from your culture. So my take on this is, as long as you are using it respectfully and you are not insulting the culture directly by doing this, you should be fine to. And that is not your choice what culture or what race you were born into. So it's not something you should be worried about. Like always, I will be happy to have a discussion about this in the comments. and I will gladly change my mind if more information is provided, but this is my current stance on it as of the recording of this video, obviously. Peace.